Security, escort her out. The words cut through Lincoln Arts Academy's auditorium like a blade through silk. Every head turned. A man in a tailored navy suit, threads probably worth more than most people's monthly rent, pointed a manicured finger at the stage. At a 10-year-old girl. Her name was Zariah Bennett. 4th grade. Southside Chicago. Braids slightly uneven because she'd done them herself that morning while her mema slept in the other room, oxygen machine humming its mechanical lullaby. She stood center stage in worn white sneakers, the kind you get from the clearance rack at Payless before it closed down. Her dress came from the Goodwill on 87th Street. Clean, pressed, but 2 sizes too big. She'd safety-pinned the waist that morning. The stage lights were too bright. Hospital bright. The kind of white that makes you squint and feel exposed. Judge Marcus Ellington leaned toward his microphone. His cologne probably cost what her mema made in a week as a home health aide, back when she could still work. Entry fees are $200, he said, voice smooth as Lake Michigan at dawn. Did you pay? Zariah's fingers tightened around a folded manila envelope pressed against her chest. Yes, sir. Her voice didn't shake. She'd practiced that. In the mirror at home. In the school bathroom. You don't show weakness when people are already looking for reasons to dismiss you. Marcus studied her. His eyes traveled from her homemade braids down to her thrift store dress, lingering on those clearance sneakers with the sole starting to separate on the left foot. A faint smirk touched his lips. This competition is for serious performers, he said. Whispers rippled through the audience like wind through dead leaves. Why is she even here? Is this some kind of charity case? Does she even have a voice coach? From the back row, barely visible in the dim auditorium lighting, sat Danielle Bennett. Zariah's mema. 42 years old but looking closer to 60. Pale. Weak. A clear oxygen tube rested beneath her nose, connected to a portable concentrator that wheezed quietly in rhythm with her labored breathing. She'd insisted on coming. Zariah had begged her to stay home, to rest, to save her strength. Baby, I wouldn't miss this for the world, Danielle had whispered that morning, her voice thin as paper. 3 weeks. That's what the doctors at Northwestern Memorial Hospital had said. 3 weeks before her aortic valve deteriorated past the point of surgical repair. 3 weeks before the surgery became impossible. 3 weeks to raise $47,300. The number lived in Zariah's head like a monster. $47,300. She'd memorized every digit. Every comma. Every impossible zero. Back on stage, Marcus Ellington flipped through her application with the kind of casual contempt rich people reserve for inconveniences. No vocal coach listed. No, sir. No formal training. No, sir. A pause. Marcus's eyes narrowed as he scanned the form. And your father's name is blank. The room shifted. That particular kind of silence that comes when everybody's thinking the same ugly thing but nobody wants to say it out loud. Zariah looked down at her scuffed sneakers. I don't have one, she said quietly. Something flickered across Marcus Ellington's face. Something uncomfortable. A shadow of recognition, maybe. Or guilt. It passed so quickly you might have missed it if you weren't watching closely. He masked it fast. Straightened his tie. Cleared his throat. Well, he said, voice cold as January wind off the lake, let's see what you've got. The pianist, an elderly white woman with silver hair pulled into a tight bun, placed her fingers on the keys. Zariah closed her eyes. Don't cry. Not here. Not in front of them. The first note rang out. And then Zariah Bennett opened her mouth and sang. The man judging her, the one who'd just tried to humiliate a little girl in a room full of strangers, had no idea he was about to hear something that would shake him to his core. Because what happened in the next 60 seconds would expose a secret buried for 10 years. If you've ever been underestimated because of where you came from, you already know what's coming next. Subscribe before this story ends. 2 months earlier. Zariah found the hospital bill on the kitchen table at 6:47 in the morning. She wasn't supposed to see it. Her mema had tried to hide it under a stack of old church bulletins and grocery store circulars. But Zariah had gotten up early to make breakfast, scrambled eggs with government cheese, the way Mama liked them, and she'd moved the papers to wipe down the table. That's when she saw it. Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Patient, Danielle Marie Bennett. Procedure, aortic valve replacement. Balance due, $47,300. The number didn't make sense at first. It was too big. Numbers that big belonged in movies or on the news when they talked about lottery winners or rich people's houses. Not on a piece of paper sitting on a kitchen table in a two-bedroom apartment on the south side where the radiator only worked half the time and you had to jiggle the toilet handle or it'd run all night. But there it was. $47,300. Zariah sat down in the rickety wooden chair, the one that wobbled because one leg was shorter than the others, and she read the whole bill. Every line. Every code. Every impossible number. Payment required within 21 days or surgery will be cancelled. 21 days. 3 weeks. She heard her mama coughing in the bedroom. That wet, rattling cough that had been getting worse for months. The cough that made Mema have to sit down after walking from the living room to the kitchen. The cough that left her breathless and pale and scared even though she tried to hide it. Zariah folded the bill carefully along its creases and put it back exactly where she'd found it. Under the church bulletins. Under the grocery circulars advertising sales on chicken thighs and canned corn. Then she went to her room. On her dresser, the one with the drawer that stuck and the mirror that had a crack running through the corner, sat a mason jar. The label, written in her own careful handwriting, read, "Choir trip to Nashville." She'd been saving for 8 months. Every birthday dollar from Grandma. Every quarter she found under the couch cushions. Every $5 Mama gave her when she did extra chores. The choir trip was in the spring. They were going to sing at the Grand Ole Opry. She'd never been out of Illinois. She'd circled the date on her calendar in red marker. Zariah unscrewed the lid. She counted the money slowly. Ones. Fives. A single 20. Quarters stacked in neat little towers. Dimes. Nickels. $212.43. Not even close to $47,300. But it was enough for something else. That afternoon, while Mema napped with the oxygen machine humming beside her bed, Zariah walked 14 blocks to the Lincoln Arts Academy in the Loop. Her feet hurt by the time she got there. Her shoes were getting too small, but Mama kept saying they'd get new ones next month, but she didn't stop. The lady at the registration desk looked at her like she'd walked in from another planet. "Can I help you?" the woman asked. She had perfect makeup and a silk blouse and manicured nails painted the color of wine. "I'd like to enter the talent competition," Zariah said. The woman's smile was the kind that didn't reach her eyes. "Entry fee is $200, sweetie. Non-refundable." Zariah pulled the mason jar out of her backpack. Set it on the polished mahogany desk. The coins clinked against the glass. The woman stared. Is this all coins?" $212.43, Zariah said. "You can keep the extra $12.43. It took 20 minutes to count it all. The woman's smile had disappeared entirely by the end. She printed out the registration form with lips pressed into a thin line. "You'll need a parent or guardian signature," she said. Zariah forged her mama's signature that night. She'd practiced it enough times, signing permission slips for school trips Mama was too tired to read, signing report cards when Mama fell asleep before dinner. She felt bad about it for exactly 3 seconds. Then she thought about the hospital bill. The 21 days. The $47,300. The sound of Mama's oxygen machine in the middle of the night. When Danielle found out, and she did find out, because Mema always found out eventually, she cried. Not angry tears. Sad ones. "Baby, you shouldn't have done that," Danielle whispered, her voice barely audible over the oxygen machine. "That was your Nashville money." Zariah sat on the edge of Mama's bed and took her hand. It felt so thin. Like bird bones wrapped in paper. "You always say God gave me a big voice, Mama," Zariah said quietly. "Maybe this is why." What Danielle never told her daughter, what she'd kept locked away for 10 years like a secret too painful to speak, was the name listed under emergency contact on those old hospital intake forms from 2015. The forms from when she was pregnant. The forms she'd filled out alone in a clinic waiting room while gospel music played softly through cheap speakers and a man she'd loved walked away. Marcus Ellington. Marcus Ellington. Most people give up when the odds are impossible. But some people? They count their coins and walk 14 blocks in shoes that don't fit. Subscribe if you want to know what Zariah's voice did to the judge who dismissed her, because what happens next will restore your faith in justice. Back in the auditorium. The pianist's first note hung in the air like a question waiting for an answer. Zariah didn't sing immediately. She let the note breathe. Let it settle. This was something she'd learned from Mima, back when Mima could still sing in the church choir before the breathlessness got too bad. Don't rush the first note, baby, Mima used to say. Let it come to you. Let the Holy Spirit fill your lungs first. So Zariah waited. 1 breath. 2. Then she opened her mouth and sang His Eye is on the Sparrow. Not loud. Not flashy. But pure. Her voice carried through that auditorium the way church bells carry across Lake Michigan on Sunday mornings, clear and resonant and impossible to ignore. It filled every corner. Every crack. Every skeptical heart. Why should I feel discouraged? Why should the shadows come? The whispers stopped. People leaned forward in their seats. Judge Marcus Ellington's pen froze mid-air above his scorecard. Because her tone. It wasn't just good. It was familiar. Painfully, impossibly familiar. The way she stretched certain vowels. The subtle vibrato at the end of sustained notes. The way her voice seemed to climb higher without strain, like smoke rising from incense. Marcus had heard that tone before. In his own voice. His pen slipped from his fingers and clattered onto the judge's table. The sound echoed but nobody noticed. Everyone was watching the little girl in the too big dress and the worn-out sneakers who was singing like she'd been doing it for 50 years instead of 10. I sing because I'm happy, I sing because I'm free. A woman in the third row started crying. 2 rows back, a man pulled out his phone and started recording even though the rules clearly said no filming during performances. Security didn't stop him. They were listening too. In the back row, Danielle Bennett closed her eyes and let tears run down her cheeks. She knew this would happen. She'd heard Zariah practice in their tiny apartment, singing into a hairbrush while standing on the kitchen chair, pretending it was a stage. But hearing it here, in this place full of people who'd looked at her baby like she didn't belong. It felt like vindication. It felt like proof that God heard prayers whispered in hospital waiting rooms and apartments where the heat didn't work. Zariah hit the final note and held it. Not showing off. Just giving it the space it deserved. Then she let it fade, gentle as sunset. Silence. For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. Then the auditorium exploded. People stood. Clapped. Shouted. A woman in the front row was openly weeping. The skeptical judges exchanged glances that said the same thing. We just witnessed something we weren't prepared for. But Marcus Ellington did not clap. He sat frozen in his chair, staring at the application form in front of him like it held the answers to questions he didn't want to ask. Name, Zariah Marie Bennett. Date of birth, March 15, 2015. Mother's name, Danielle Marie Bennett. Father's name, blank. March 2015. His hands started shaking. No. No, that's impossible. But the math was right there. Undeniable. 10 years old. Born in March 2015. To a woman named Danielle Bennett. The same Danielle Bennett he'd dated in 2014. The same Danielle Bennett who'd told him she was pregnant. The same Danielle Bennett he'd accused of lying because he was 26 and touring and building his brand and a baby didn't fit into his 5-year plan. The same Danielle Bennett who'd sent him a letter 3 months later saying she'd lost the baby. He'd believed it. Or maybe he'd wanted to believe it. Marcus looked up at the stage. At Zariah. Really looked at her this time. Her eyes. Dark brown with flecks of gold when the light hit them right. Like his. The shape of her face. The widow's peak in her hairline. Like his mother's. That voice. God. That voice. The applause continued but Marcus heard none of it. His world had narrowed to a single thought screaming in his head. That's my daughter. The blood drained from his face. But before he could process what he'd just realized, Before he could stand up or speak or do anything, another judge leaned into her microphone. A white woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and a pearl necklace that probably cost more than Zariah's mama made in a year. Judge Patricia Whitmore. There's been a concern brought to our attention, she said, her voice cutting through the applause like a knife through cake. The clapping stopped. The room tensed. Her entry payment was made in coins and small bills, Patricia continued. We need to verify the payment was legitimate and not acquired through questionable means. Gasps. Murmurs. Someone in the audience said, "Are you serious right now?" Public humiliation. Again. Zariah's hands trembled. The applause that had wrapped around her like a warm blanket moments ago evaporated. Now she stood exposed. Accused. I paid it, she whispered into the microphone. I counted it myself. Marcus Ellington looked at the envelope still clutched against Zariah's chest. The envelope she'd been holding since she walked on stage. Hospital logo visible on the corner. Northwestern Memorial. He knew that logo. He'd sponsored that hospital's children's wing 2 years ago. Wrote a check for $100,000 and got his name on a plaque in the lobby. His stomach dropped. Because 10 years ago, there had been another Bennett who'd walked into his life. And what he was about to discover in that envelope would destroy every lie he'd told himself for the past decade. You think you've seen injustice before? Wait until you see what's in that envelope. But most people will never know, because they don't subscribe to see how this ends. Don't be most people. The next chapter reveals a truth that'll make your blood boil. Chicago. Summer 2014. Before we go back to that auditorium, before we watch Marcus Ellington's world collapse, you need to understand how we got here. 10 years is a long time to run from the truth. Marcus met Danielle Bennett at a gospel concert at the House of Hope Church on 47th Street. She was singing in the choir. He was the guest performer, the rising star everyone was talking about. 26 years old with a record deal and a future so bright it hurt to look at directly. She was 28. A home health aide working double shifts to pay off her mama's funeral expenses. Beautiful in the quiet way some women are, not flashy, just present. Real. They dated for 6 months. He told her he loved her on a Tuesday night in November while rain hammered against her apartment windows and Marvin Gaye played softly from her phone speaker. She believed him. December came. He got offered a 6-month European tour. Opening for a major gospel act. The kind of opportunity that could make or break a career. January, Danielle called him while he was in London. Marcus, I'm pregnant. Silence on the line. Transatlantic silence that stretched for what felt like hours but was probably only 30 seconds. Then, are you sure it's mine? She hung up. He called back 17 times. She didn't answer. 2 weeks later, he sent an email. Look, I'm not ready for this. I'm building something. You knew that when we started. If you want to keep it, that's your choice. But I can't be part of it right now. Maybe you should reconsider. Reconsider. That's the word he used. Like a baby was a business decision you could just opt out of with the right language. Danielle didn't respond. March 2015, he got a letter. Handwritten. Postmarked from Chicago. I lost the baby. Miscarriage at 14 weeks. Thought you should know. Don't contact me again. D. He felt relief. Then he felt guilt about feeling relief. Then he pushed it all down into that dark place where men bury the things they don't want to face and he moved on with his life. The tour went well. His album dropped. He won awards. Got endorsements. Built a brand. Never looked back. Until now. Back in the auditorium. Judge Patricia Whitmore was still talking, her voice dripping with the kind of polite contempt rich white women reserve for people they consider beneath them. We'll need to pause the competition while we verify the payment source, she said. We have standards to maintain. Standards. That's what she called it. What she meant was, we don't want poor people here. We don't want people who count coins. We don't want little black girls in thrift store dresses reminding our wealthy donors that poverty still exists in Chicago. The audience erupted. Half the room started booing. The other half pulled out phones to record. Someone shouted, "This is racist." Someone else yelled, "Let her sing." But Zariah just stood there on stage, small and alone, clutching that envelope. Marcus Ellington stood up. His chair scraped against the floor, loud enough that people turned to look at him. "I need to see that envelope," he said. His voice didn't sound like his own. It sounded hollow, distant. Zariah looked at him. Those eyes that were somehow his eyes, studied his face with an expression that made him want to disappear. "Why?" she asked quietly. "Please," he said. She hesitated, then walked to the edge of the stage and handed it to him. The envelope was warm from being pressed against her chest. Marcus opened it with shaking hands. Inside, Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Patient, Danielle Marie Bennett. Date of birth, the 8th of December 1986. Procedure, aortic valve replacement, emergency. Scheduled date, March 3, 2026. Balance due, $47,300. Payment required by February 10, 2026. The date was 2 days away. Marcus looked up at Zariah. "Your mother," he whispered. "Where is she?" "In the back," Zariah said. "She wanted to see me sing." Marcus pushed through the crowd. People moved aside, confused. He reached the back row. The seat was empty. The portable oxygen concentrator sat abandoned on the floor, still humming. A security guard approached. "Paramedics took a woman out about 5 minutes ago," he said. "She collapsed during the performance." Marcus felt the floor tilt beneath him. Danielle, the woman he'd abandoned 10 years ago, was dying. The daughter he didn't know existed had just sung her heart out to save her. And he, the man who'd written a check for $100,000 to get his name on a hospital plaque, was about to discover what it really costs to walk away from the people you're supposed to love. 10 years of running from the truth. One hospital bill. One daughter who never stopped believing. If you're not subscribed yet, you're missing the most powerful moment in this entire story, and it happens in the next chapter. Don't let someone else tell you how this ends. Subscribe now. Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Emergency entrance. Marcus arrived 17 minutes after the ambulance. He'd run 6 blocks. Left his Mercedes idling outside the auditorium with the door open and the keys still in the ignition. Didn't care. Let someone steal it. What did it matter? His $1,000 Italian leather shoes slapped against wet pavement. Chicago in February. Cold enough to see your breath. Cold enough that his lungs burned. But he didn't feel it. All he felt was the weight of 10 years crushing down on his chest. The automatic doors slid open. Fluorescent lights. Antiseptic smell. A television mounted in the corner playing the news on mute. He approached the desk. A young black woman in scrubs looked up. "I'm looking for Danielle Bennett," Marcus said. His voice came out wrong. Too high. Too desperate. She was brought in by ambulance. Heart condition. Collapsed at. "Are you family?" the nurse asked. Marcus opened his mouth. Closed it. "Am I?" The truth was he didn't know. He'd walked away before he could find out. Before he could be family. Before he could be anything except a coward with a record deal and a 5-year plan that didn't include responsibility. He started. Then a small voice behind him said, "Here's my father." Marcus turned. Zariah stood in the doorway. Still in her thrift store dress. Still clutching that empty envelope. Her braids were coming loose. Her eyes were red but dry. She looked so small. So heartbreakingly small. The nurse glanced between them. Her eyes lingered on Marcus's expensive suit, then moved to Zariah's worn sneakers. "Yeah, I see it." Her expression said. "I see exactly what kind of man you are." "She's in surgery prep," the nurse said quietly. "Room 314. 3rd floor." Marcus started toward the elevators. "Wait." He stopped. Turned. Zariah was looking at him with an expression that made him want to disappear into the floor. "You don't get to just show up," she said. Her voice was steady. Controlled. The same way it had been on stage when Judge Whitmore tried to humiliate her. Marcus swallowed. "I know. You don't get to walk in here and pretend you care." "I do care." Now you do, Zoraya said. Now that you know. But what about before? What about when Mama was working double shifts while she was pregnant? What about when I was born and she was alone? What about every birthday? Every Christmas? Every time I asked where my daddy was and she had to make up lies because the truth was too ugly. Every word landed like a punch. Marcus felt tears burning behind his eyes. You're right, he whispered. You're absolutely right. I don't need you, Zoraya continued. Mama doesn't need you. We've been fine without you for 10 years. Then why did you tell the nurse I was your father? Silence. Zoraya looked away. Her jaw tightened. Because she needs that surgery, she said finally. And they won't let me in to see her unless I have an adult. So you can come upstairs. You can sit in that room. But don't think it means anything. She turned and walked toward the elevator. Marcus followed. They rode up in silence. The elevator hummed. Somewhere a machine beeped. A doctor's voice crackled over the intercom requesting someone to radiology. 3rd floor. The doors opened. Room 314 was at the end of a long hallway that smelled like disinfectant and fear. Danielle lay in the hospital bed looking even thinner than Marcus remembered. Her skin had a grayish pallor. The oxygen tube was still beneath her nose. Monitors beeped steadily beside her. Her eyes were closed. Zoraya walked to the bed and took her mama's hand. I'm here, Ma, she whispered. Danielle's eyes fluttered open. Unfocused at first. Then they landed on her daughter and something like peace crossed her face. Baby, she breathed. You were beautiful. I heard every note before. Her eyes shifted. Landed on Marcus standing in the doorway. Her whole body went rigid. What is he doing here? Her voice was weak but the anger in it was sharp as broken glass. Zoraya squeezed her hand. He saw the hospital bill, Mama. He knows. Danielle closed her eyes. Get him out. Danielle, Marcus started. Don't, she cut him off. Don't you dare say my name like you have the right. A doctor entered. Young South Asian woman with kind eyes and tired shoulders. Ms. Bennett? I'm Dr. Patel. We need to talk about the surgery. She glanced at Marcus. At Zoraya. Is this family? He's leaving, Danielle said. Actually, Dr. Patel said gently, I need to speak with whoever is responsible for payment. The surgery is scheduled for tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. We still show an outstanding balance of $47,300. Without payment or confirmed insurance coverage, we'll have to postpone. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Postpone. Not cancel. Not deny. Postpone. The polite medical word for, you're too poor to live. Marcus pulled out his phone. Put it on my card, he said. No, Danielle said immediately. Danielle. I said no. Mummy, please, Zoraya said quietly. I don't want his money. But I want you alive. The 10-year-old girl who'd saved every coin for 8 months looked at her mother with eyes that had seen too much too soon. And for the first time in 10 years, Danielle Bennett had to decide, would she let pride kill her? Or would she let the man who abandoned her save her life? Room 314. 11:47 p.m. Zoraya had fallen asleep in the chair beside her mama's bed. Her head rested at an awkward angle against the armrest. Someone had draped a hospital blanket over her shoulders. Marcus sat on the opposite side of the room. He hadn't moved in 4 hours. Dr. Patel had left his credit card information at the billing desk. The surgery was confirmed for 6 a.m. In 6 hours and 13 minutes, they would cut open Danielle's chest and replace the valve that was killing her. If she survived. The success rate was 95%, Dr. Patel had said. But 5% was still a chance. 5% was still a possibility that Zoraya could wake up tomorrow without a mother. Marcus watched Danielle sleep. The rise and fall of her chest. The oxygen tube. The 4-drip. She looked so different from the woman he remembered. 10 years ago, she'd been vibrant. Full of life. She used to laugh at his terrible jokes. Used to sing while she cooked. Used to trace her fingers along his jaw and tell him he was going to be something special. And he'd believed her. He'd been so hungry for it. The fame. The recognition. The proof that a kid from the West Side could make it. Could be somebody. So when she told him she was pregnant, all he could think was, this will ruin everything. Not, I'm going to be a father. Not, we're going to have a family. Just, this will ruin everything. And he'd been right, in a way. It would have ruined his plans. His timeline. His carefully constructed path to success. But what he hadn't understood then, what he was only beginning to understand now, sitting in this hospital room at midnight watching a woman he'd loved and abandoned fight for every breath, was that some things are supposed to ruin your plans. Some things are supposed to break you open. Some things are supposed to make you choose between who you want to be and who you are. You're still here. Danielle's voice was barely above a whisper. Marcus looked up. Her eyes were open. Watching him. I wasn't sure you'd stay, she said. I'm not going anywhere. You're good at that, actually. Going places. The bitterness in her voice was earned. Marcus stood. Walked to the side of her bed. Not too close. He didn't have the right to be close. Why didn't you tell me? He asked quietly. I did tell you. About Zariah. About her being alive. Danielle closed her eyes. You made your choice, Marcus. You told me to reconsider. You asked if it was even yours. You walked away before I could tell you I was keeping her. So I let you believe what you wanted to believe. That wasn't fair. Her eyes snapped open. Fair? Her voice was stronger now. Angry. You want to talk about fair? I raised that little girl alone. I worked 60-hour weeks while I was pregnant. I gave birth in a county hospital with no one holding my hand. I watched you on TV winning awards while I was using WIC vouchers to buy formula. And you want to talk to me about fair? Marcus felt something break inside his chest. You're right, he whispered. You're absolutely right. I was selfish. I was a coward. I was. You were 26 years old and scared, Danielle said quietly. The anger had drained from her voice. Now she just sounded tired. I was angry for a long time, she continued. But then Zariah was born and I looked at her face and I realized. I couldn't hate you completely. Because half of her is you. The good half. The talented half. The half that makes her brave enough to walk 14 blocks to enter a competition she had no business entering. She turned her head to look at Zariah sleeping in the chair. She has your voice, you know. That same tone. That same power. I heard it the first time she sang in church when she was 5 years old. And it hurt. God, it hurt so much. Because every time she opened her mouth, I heard you. Marcus's vision blurred. I'm sorry, he said. The words felt pathetically inadequate. I know you are, Danielle said. But sorry doesn't give her back 10 years. Sorry doesn't change the fact that she used to cry herself to sleep asking why her daddy didn't want her. Sorry doesn't. Her voice cracked. She took a shaky breath. I'm dying, Marcus. No. Dr. Patel said. I'm dying, she repeated. Maybe not tomorrow. Maybe the surgery works. Maybe I get another 5 years. Maybe 10. But this disease is progressive. Eventually, it'll kill me. And when it does, Zariah will be alone. She reached out. Took his hand. Hers felt so fragile. So I need to know, she said, looking directly into his eyes. If I don't make it through tomorrow, if something goes wrong, will you take care of her? Not with money. Not with guilt. But really take care of her? Be her father? Marcus squeezed her hand. Yes. I'm serious, Marcus. She doesn't need a benefactor. She doesn't need someone who sends checks on birthdays and shows up for graduations. She needs a father. Someone who will braid her hair wrong and burn her pancakes and sit through boring school plays and love her even when she's difficult and stubborn and just like her mother. A small smile touched Danielle's lips. Just like her mother. Then yes, Marcus said. I promise. Danielle studied his face. Searching for something. Truth, maybe. Or sincerity. Or proof that 10 years had changed him into someone worthy of the daughter he didn't deserve. Whatever she was looking for, she must have found it. Because she nodded. Okay. She closed her eyes. You should tell her, she whispered. Before the surgery. Tell her who you are. Tell her the truth. All of it. She deserves that. Marcus looked at Zoraya. She was still asleep. Still clutching that empty envelope. What if she doesn't want to know? Then you tell her anyway, Danielle said. Because running from the truth is what got us here. 10 years of lies. One night to make it right. Most people will scroll past this moment. But you? You're still here. That means something. Subscribe now, because the conversation that happens when Zoraya wakes up will either heal them or destroy them forever. 2 weeks later, Danielle survived the surgery. More than survived. Dr. Patel called it textbook perfect. The new valve was functioning beautifully. Danielle's color had returned. The oxygen tube was gone. She could walk from the bedroom to the kitchen without having to sit down. It was a miracle. Or maybe it was just good medicine and $4,000 to $7,000. Either way, she was alive. And Zoraya was singing again. The Lincoln Arts Academy talent show had gone viral. Not the performances. The scandal. Someone had filmed Judge Patricia Whitmore questioning Zoraya's payment. The video had 17 million views. The comments were brutal. Imagine humiliating a child for being poor. This is why people hate the wealthy. She sang like an angel and they treated her like a criminal. The media picked it up. Local news. Then national. CNN ran a segment. The View dedicated an entire episode to discussing classism and prejudice in arts education. Judge Patricia Whitmore resigned in disgrace. And the Lincoln Arts Academy, desperate to salvage their reputation, announced a special finals event. Bigger venue. National livestream. Prize money increased to $50,000. Plus a scholarship grant. They invited Zoraya back. She almost said no. I don't need their apology, she told her mama. They were sitting at the kitchen table. The same table where Zoraya had found the hospital bill 2 months ago. But now it was different. Lighter somehow. Danielle was drinking coffee. Real coffee. Not the weak stuff she used to make to stretch the grounds. It's not about them, Danielle said. It's about you. About showing everyone what I already know. That you're extraordinary. Zoraya looked at the envelope. Not the hospital bill envelope. That one was gone. Paid in full. This was a new one. Cream-colored cardstock. Embossed lettering. The Lincoln Arts Academy presents, finals night. Will he be there? Zoraya asked quietly. Danielle knew who she meant. I think so. He's still a judge. Zoraya hadn't called him dad yet. Hadn't called him anything, actually. Marcus had been coming by the apartment 3 times a week. Bringing groceries. Fixing the radiator. Sitting at this same kitchen table making awkward small talk while Zoraya did her homework. It was painful to watch. But he kept showing up. Okay, Zoraya said finally. I'll do it. The Chicago Theater. February 26, 2026. The finals were nothing like the preliminary round. This was a production. Professional lighting. Live orchestra. Camera crews. The venue seated 3,600 people and every seat was filled. Zoraya stood backstage in a new dress. Not expensive. Her mama had taken her to Target. But it fit. And it was hers. And when Zoraya looked in the mirror, she didn't see a poor girl pretending to belong. She saw herself. Marcus found her in the green room. Hey! Zoraya looked up from the sheet music she'd been studying. Hey! Silence. Marcus shifted his weight. I wanted to tell you something. Before you go on. Zoraya waited. I'm proud of you, Marcus said. I know I don't have the right to say that. I know I haven't earned it. But watching you up there 2 weeks ago, hearing your voice, you're everything I wish I'd been brave enough to be at your age. Zoraya's throat tightened. You don't have to say that. I know. But I want to. Because it's true. He pulled something from his pocket. A small box. This was my grandmother's, he said. Your great-grandmother. She raised me when my parents couldn't. She's the one who taught me to sing. Who told me I had a gift. who believed in me when nobody else did. He opened the box. Inside was a simple silver necklace with a small treble clef charm. She gave this to me before my first real performance. Told me that music was a prayer. That every note was a conversation with God. That I should never take it for granted. He held it out. I want you to have it. Zariah stared at the necklace. I can't. Please. She would have loved you. She would have been so proud of who you are. Zariah took the necklace. The silver was warm. Worn smooth by years of handling. Thank you, she whispered. Marcus smiled. Not the polished smile he wore for cameras. Something smaller. More real. Go show them what you've got. Zariah walked onto that stage and the applause was deafening. People stood before she even reached the microphone. The video had made her famous. Made her a symbol. Made her story bigger than herself. But when the applause died down and the orchestra began to play, none of that mattered. It was just Zariah. And her voice. And the song she'd chosen. Not His Eye is on the Sparrow this time. This time, she sang Stand Up by Cynthia Erivo. A song about fighting when the world tries to break you. A song about rising when they expect you to fall. She didn't just sing it. She lived it. Every word was a testimony. Every note was a battle cry. Every breath was proof that you can count your coins and walk 14 blocks and stand on a stage in front of people who dismissed you and still be magnificent. When she finished, the silence lasted exactly 4 seconds. Then the Chicago theater exploded. 3,600 people on their feet. Screaming. Crying. Believing. The judges didn't need to deliberate. Zariah Bennett won. Unanimously. But before they announced the winner, Marcus stood up. He walked to the microphone at the judges' table. The crowd quieted. I need to say something, he began. Every camera in the building focused on him. 2 weeks ago, I sat at this table and watched a little girl get humiliated for being poor. For having the audacity to believe she belonged here. And I said nothing. The audience was dead silent. I should have stopped it. I should have stood up. I should have used my voice to defend someone who couldn't defend herself. But I didn't. Because I was too busy trying to protect my reputation. He looked at Zariah standing on stage. That little girl taught me something. She taught me that courage isn't about having power. It's about using what little you have to fight for what matters. She counted coins. Walked miles. Stood up here and sang her heart out to save her mother's life. His voice cracked. And tonight, I witnessed her do it again. Not for money. Not for fame. But because she has something that can't be bought or taught. She has grace. He turned to face the audience. Zariah Bennett is my daughter. I didn't know that 2 weeks ago. I didn't know because I walked away from her mother 10 years ago when she needed me most. I was a coward. I was selfish. I was wrong. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Cameras flashed. Somewhere in the back, Danielle was crying. I can't get those 10 years back, Marcus continued. I can't undo the damage. I can't erase the pain. But I can stand here tonight and tell the truth. And the truth is that she doesn't need me. She never did. She's already extraordinary. He looked at Zariah. But if you'll let me, I'd like to try to be worthy of you. The audience held its breath. Zariah stood frozen at the microphone. Then, slowly, she smiled. Not a big smile. Just a small one. But it was enough. Public confession. Private redemption. 3,000 witnesses to a moment that changes 2 lives forever. If you've read this far without subscribing, you're denying yourself the ending this story deserves. Hit that button now. 3 months later. Zariah sat at the kitchen table doing her math homework. The radiator worked now. The toilet didn't run. The apartment was still small, still in the same building on the south side, but it felt different. Lighter. Her mama was in the living room watching Jeopardy. She'd gone back to work part-time. Light duty. No more 60-hour weeks. No more double shifts. The hospital bill was paid. The scholarship was deposited. Life was normal. Or as normal as life can be when you go viral and become a symbol of resilience and your estranged father publicly claims you on national television. The interview requests had finally slowed down. Good Morning America. The Ellen Show. 60 Minutes. Zariah had said no to all of them. I just want to be a kid, she told her mama. So they let her be a kid. Knock knock. Zariah looked up. Marcus stood in the doorway holding a pizza box and a bag from the corner store. Pizza Friday, he said. It had become a thing. Every Friday. He brought dinner. They ate together. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they just existed in the same space. Baby steps. Extra cheese? Zariah asked. You know it. Danielle came out of the living room. You're late, she said. Traffic on the Dan Ryan. Always is. They set the table together. Paper plates. No fancy dishes. Just normal. Marcus had offered to buy them a house. Something bigger. Nicer. In a better neighborhood. Danielle had said no. This is our home, she told him. We don't need you to rescue us. We just need you to show up. So he showed up. Every Friday. Sometimes Wednesday too. They ate pizza and talked about school and work and nothing important. Marcus asked about Zariah's choir practice. Danielle told a story about a patient who kept trying to reorganize her medical cart. Normal things. Human things. After dinner, Zariah went back to her homework. Marcus started to gather the paper plates. Wait. Zariah's voice was quiet. Marcus stopped. She didn't look up from her math book. Can you help me with number 7? I don't get fractions. It was such a small thing. Such a normal request. But Marcus felt his chest tighten. Because it meant she was letting him in. Yeah, he said, sitting down beside her. Let me see. They worked through the problem together. Marcus explained it wrong the first time. Zariah laughed. He tried again. Eventually, they figured it out. Thanks, Zariah said. Anytime. She looked at him. Really looked at him. You're getting better at this, she said. At math. At being here. Marcus smiled. I'm trying. I know. She went back to her homework. Marcus stood to leave. He got to the door. Marcus. He turned. Zariah was still looking down at her math book. But her hand had moved to the treble clef necklace she wore every day now. Next week, maybe you could come on Wednesday too. If you want. His vision blurred. I'd like that. Okay. A pause. Then. Good night, Dad. The word hung in the air. Small. Tentative. But real. Marcus's throat closed. Good night, sweetheart. He left before she could see him cry. In the apartment, Danielle joined Zariah at the table. You called him Dad. Zariah shrugged. Felt right. Danielle squeezed her daughter's shoulder. You're braver than I ever was. I learned from the best. They sat together in comfortable silence. Outside, Chicago hummed its evening song. Cars. Sirens. Life. But inside this small apartment on the south side, where the radiator finally worked and the bills were paid and a little girl had learned that courage sounds like coins in a jar and looks like forgiveness given in small, measured doses. Inside, there was peace.
Sometimes the loudest voices come from the smallest people. Sometimes the greatest judges must first judge themselves. Sometimes the price of redemption is paid in small moments, not grand gestures. Sometimes courage is counting coins in a mason jar. Sometimes love is showing up on Fridays when nobody asks you to. And sometimes, just sometimes, forgiveness sounds like a 10-year-old girl saying goodnight, Dad, for the very first time. Now I want to ask you, if you were Zariah, could you forgive him? Was 10 years too late? Or does everyone deserve a second chance? Drop your answer in the comments. Tell us if you think Marcus earned the right to be called Dad. Tell us if Danielle was too harsh or too forgiving. Tell us your story if you've ever had to choose between pride and survival. And if stories like this remind you that hidden greatness deserves a spotlight. Subscribe. Because the next underdog we uncover, the next voice that needs to be heard, The next person the world underestimated. They might be one click away from changing your entire perspective on what's possible. Don't miss it.